I'm Anna Fellander. I'm founder of ANC AI. I am thrilled to be here to talk about how we can release the true value of AI and accelerate responsible AI across organizations and sectors such as healthcare. Let me just go back in time before I was the chief economist at Sweden's largest retail bank. And I spent 10 years doing macroeconomic forecasting and scenario analysis at the Ministry of Finance and at the Prime Minister's office during the financial crisis. And I got fascinated by what could not be measured and what was happening under the surface. So as the chief economist at Swedbank, I did research and implemented tools for measuring the positive externalities from digitalization, such as transparency and democracy on platforms. And we did actually new type of measures on productivity and inflation. But in 2016, I recognized a shift. So from digitalization, having positive externalities that said there was a consumer surplus, there was a willingness to pay. It shifted into a negative externality as data-driven technologies and AI entered organizations. So what I did, I left the bank and I started as affiliated at the Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden. I started a multidisciplinary research group. And we developed an ethical risk assessment methodology. This was through three perspectives: the legal, the technical, and the business side. And we had this ethical risk assessment methodology tested and vetted in a sandbox environment with policy regulators, academic from different fields, private public sector, startups, civil society. In 2018, I founded ANC.ai, and that's an ethical AI governance platform. But today I'm going to speak more about the research and the methodology underlying it. And we start by saying that AI creates enormous values for not at least health sector, but also for individuals and the economy as a whole. And every business knows that they need to keep up and be and maintain their relevance through embracing AI. Yet, AI ungoverned opens up the door to costly ethical risks and legal breaches. And these can scale beyond control, as it is self-scaling and self-learning with low transparency and low ability for explainability. So we came about this risk assessment methodology thinking first about the negative externality, the dark cloud of digital pollution, as you would opt in, and the opposite of a consumer surplus, you would opt in and get not a positive unexpected value of it, but actually you would get, in some cases, privacy intrusion, discrimination, lost autonomy to make a conscious decision, dis or misinformation, social exclusion, and harm to safety. So these were the risks that we defined. And if we look at it from a medical or a healthcare perspective, or actually a mental health AI application perspective, there is a unvisualized trade-off between where you want your data to be. You opt in to get as tailored offerings and solution, but the privacy intrusion border lies within each individual, and there must be consent. But the GDPR, even though you are GDPR compliant, it's too complex for a patient or an individual to actually grasp. If I give away my data in this context or in this application, how could it be used and combined with other data and create insights that could be privacy intrusive for me? When it comes to discrimination, we all know that data in health sector has been dominated by male data. This could lead to both harm to safety. It could actually kill women if we use algorithms on large data sets with male physiology. When it comes to lost autonomy, we sometimes let the application leave, we leave our choice of autonomy to make our decision based on the convenience of it, and miss this information when it comes to censorship versus freedom of speech. It's not really visualized or transparent in these applications. Social exclusion happens when the algorithm learns that high income areas would pay their bills with more precision and timely than less strong economic households, and hence unconsciously provide health services to high income areas over low income area. Okay, so that was the 6 risks. And what we did after that, we said, okay, what are the root causes in an organization? Why is this happening? So we categorized 4 root causes of these risks. And we said, the first is misuse or overuse of data and AI. So if I have like a menstrual application to track my hormones, I could, if I don't have transparent opt-in, opt-out, it could be used by, for example, commercial companies knowing exactly when to sell certain items to me, and that might be fantastic for me, but it could also not be fantastic, as I could be more vulnerable to an algorithm nudging on my risk appetite or what have you. The second root cause that we identified was the bias of the creator. So we are all here knowing that most coders are men. So in this context, the ability to code, for example, diversity or ethical principles is done from the male perspective. So there's also a root cause that we identified, that is immature data or AI. So in healthcare, there are really strict ethical, or in pharmaceutical business, there's really strict ethical guidelines and principles. But in the AI space, it seems that there's no go-to-market readiness threshold to validate AI in health. So that could mean that there are facial recognitions being less precise on certain group, and so on. There could also be that the data is not sufficient enough, so that there will be discrimination or social exclusion. And the last root cause is data bias, when you amplify norms that it is historical and unwanted. So that you would say that the data bias is when the data is not reflecting the reality or the preferred reality. And this is a really big topic, and one of these four root causes that research has been identified mostly. So what we say is that for the root causes to be handled to avoid these risks, you need four guiding principles and fundamentals, and that is explainability, it is transparency, accountability, and governance. And these examples that I have here, none of them have considered any sort of governance when it comes to putting these AIs on the market. So we start with there's one famous one on the Starbucks AI upselling recommendation engine that nudged 6,000 calories in a young cohort. There is an UK government when they were using AI for scoring text, amplifying bias. So worse scoring for students in the low-income regions. And also there's examples from the financial sectors where females would have lower credit scoring, even though that they had the same initial financial stability as the male. And also when it comes to recruitment, there is AI recommendation engine only recommending white male to high execute CEO positions. But I mean, these examples could all be translated into a health context where you see where there is privacy intrusion in very, very, very sensitive data that could be used for algorithms that has their target goal on increasing profits, engagement, and sales. The discrimination and the harm to safety is a really disencouraging and a very crucial aspects of using data in health care, in mental care, not to do false negatives. Or I mean, you have a lot of exposure to pitfalls, and all you need is a ethical lens and guardrails to control for this. So the risk here is that we use AI without guardrails, and then we have severe results that leads to a distrust in the technology as a whole. And it's too good to be true to do that. So when it comes to solving this problem, we realized early that the problem lies in organizations is that AI solutions are developed in an organizational silo without the integrated technical, legal, and business related oversights. And this does not only expose you for legal breaches, but also for the risks that in healthcare could lead to really injuring people. So let me give you an example. If you would have an heart sensor, an AI application to measure your heart rate and to alarm and alert you when there is danger, the AI silos often have in best cases, a fairness model where they would have a measure or a metrics for the trade-off between accuracy and fairness. So if you would have the fairness, the protected groups as women and male, you would have the more accuracy of the model, the less fair between those protective groups. So as it works in most organizations, these ethical considerations are made in the tech silo. So imagine this art sensor AI application. If in the legal term, fairness, it's not the same term as as the regulations say. So there could be discriminatory laws that are violated when the tech team then decides on this trade-off. And it's another silo. If we take it's the tech team, it's the legal team, and then it's the business area team. So imagine that you use an AI application in different contexts. So say this trade-off between accuracy and fairness is there's one specific trade-off, and if it's legal or not, when the patient is in their own sofa at home, or if it's in the hospital. So which I want to really underline that the critical decisions are made in the tech team without knowing if it's legal, discriminating, violating privacy, nor does they have the context of where the solution can be used or misused. So lawyers, they are not trained to understand code, and coders are not educated or guided in the organization's ethical values or how they are coded. And sometimes it's only the business team that knows the different context and solution can be used. So these examples that I've mentioned, they fall under violating the upcoming EU regulation on AI. And it's going to lead to sanction. But let me just pause for the methodology for ethical AI. We have these ethical AI declaration. We say in order to have AI to sustain privacy, fairness, inclusion, autonomy, security and security and information, you need to control for these unintended pitfalls, and you need to have in your organization accountability and a governance structure supporting that. And in the use case focus, you need explainability and transparency. When we started this research, we were communicating with the EU Trustworthy Group on AI. So we had 200 different questions with tagged to all of these features in the framework. There are more, but these scanning questions were a type of input for this upcoming regulation. So we're very prepared for this regulation that will come in place in EU in 2024, and it will mean massive reporting and risk assessment in every AI. And AI is also defined really as hard-coded data to deep learning. So it's really wide, and there's some critics saying that it's hampering innovation and productivity in the EU, and that there will be a administrative burden that will hit SMEs more than large organizations. But nevertheless, the European Margrethe Vestager, EU Commissioner, she was extremely value-driven in her speech introducing this proposal in April last year. She said that EU values and the human rights must be protected. And she says there's a competitive edge towards US and China with trustworthy AI. And I do fully agree with her that we cannot have AI solutions violating human rights. And especially in highly sensitive sectors such as healthcare, there needs to be guardrails for the use of data and AI. So the upcoming regulation has 4 categories where they say that there are some unacceptable risks where AI will be prohibited with sanctions up to 6%. And this is really a GDPR moment. GDPR had sanctions up to 4%. So this is a really big moment for European healthcare providers and organizations using AI. So this is where you have social scoring unacceptable and banned, facial recognition that is general, and when AI used in manipulation. So the healthcare would be the second highest, second layer here from the top, high risk. And this is where you have a really high reporting burden, and you would have a governance and auditing requirements where you have to screen all AI in your organization for transparency, explainability, robust governance, and you will have a lot of feature in place, and then you would report to the EU database. And then these that would have limited risks is, for example, you would have chatbots that would require only that you say you're transparent about that this is a chatbot. But when it comes to the minimal risk and the limited risks, the EU Commission encouraged these to have code of conducts, how they use their data. It's ethical AI principles. And of course, there is the whole US and Canada as well, and the EU will all be affected by this regulation, since if they want to, the organizations needs to operate in the EU, they have to comply to this. And I mean, regulation is always second best, but this is actually a really for the health area, a really urgent regulation. And I guess we see some American, US organizations in healthcare having their ethical AI principles to create trust among their patients. But the really key to coping with the EU regulation and the upcoming exploding demand from patients and customers to have transparency and explanation how their data is used is how organizations govern their AI. It's the new type of governance where you have sometimes we call it at AI, it takes 3 to tango, because you need a cross-functional orchestration between the tech team, the legal team, and the business team. So first of all, you have to demystify the tech team. So there are the times are over when the tech team could work alone with only reporting on success on upsells or profits or increased engagement. So there has to be an alignment. What does fairness mean in a legal term? How does the organizational principles, how are they ensured and being translated into code? So there needs to be an alignment and a visualization for ethical considerations and trade-off. So this is an example would be how smart can a healthcare app become without intruding privacy? And when does a recommendation engine from supporting mental diseases, when does it support that? Or when do you lose your autonomy to actually make the conscious decisions that you have your human right to do? So it's crucial to have an insurance and an ethical lens on AI in health tech solutions and in mental health. The European organizations are really stepping up now to these new types of regulations and reporting requirements, and the new type of governance will, with this cross functionality, will actually not be a red tape on the tech team. It will create speed and efficiency. So what seems to be a burdensome road to collaboration across functions will lead to the way for innovations that is actually validated to conform to the organizational values and principles, and to comply to regulation. So every AI use case must be vetted and screened depending on their own risk profile. There's actually no way to do this in a blunt way. You have to go through the vetting process of every AI solutions. But the way that you do the governance is key, and therefore we have a platform for ethical AI governance, and we've created an insight engine, since the screening questions provide us a lot of we receive a lot of in-depth information and insights on real use case challenges. So using our methodology, with the first step of the 5-step methodology is the screening, where you activate the tech team, the business team, and the legal team to answer these questions in different surveys, and then you get the information of what risks are you exposed to, why are you exposed to them, what functions is responsible, and how can you do to improve your risk score. So for example, you get, after you've done your screening and seen your results on what you are exposed to, why and how and where, you get recommended actions. So for example, when it comes to this recommendations of accountability, so remember we had the transparency, explainability, accountability, and governance as our requirements and fundamentals. And then you would have the tech team, and we had the tech, legal, and compliance and business team. That one recommendation could be ensure that there is a person function who is responsible for detecting, measuring, and governing human biases in your solution. Okay, so with that said, this is also our ethical AI governance mitigation modules. I mentioned the fairness tools that some tech teams use when you have the trade-off between accuracy and fairness. We also, within this platform, developed a tool for where you can visualize and align the trade-offs between the tech, legal, and business team. So, well, I'm a woman in AI. It's not the focus of medical care, but it's the ethical AI governance platform is sector independent. So it doesn't matter where you are in your AI maturity or what sector you are, you can use this platform to ensure that your AI is not unintentionally violating your ethical principles. So I've been doing this since 2016. I'm driven by my passion for gender equality, for human rights. And I'm from Sweden, and we had female vote rights in 1921. I'm gonna fight my entire life that my daughters that the development is not going backwards, and that we ensure that we both have equal amounts of women as men in the development of AI, and putting out the guardrails for AI. Anyone can visit our platform and use and test the platforms for free. And I want to just start with end with my key takeaways. So status quo is not an alternative. Trust is key to have patients feeling that they can opt in with their data. Also, AI regulation is coming. This is a GDPR moment. The other world outside the EU will not be ineffective, but you can turn this regulation to really a competitive edge, because you know that you won't be falling into unintended pitfalls that could be super costly and harm your reputation and brand and patience. And also this ethical considerations in AI, that's business critical. So it's time for the boards to require key risk indicators on ethical AI. And it's also time for the legal and the business team to step in and demystify the tech team silo. So with that said, I want to thank you for listening,